Hi everyone, it's Mahalia here, and today I have with me someone who is going to share her story, her journey, and I can't wait. I'm really excited to hear it. I know it's going to be a blessing to all of us, and we'll all be able to take something away from it, something that's going to inspire us to be and to live and to continue in our walk in with Christ. And it's none other than Quiana. Quiana, say hello to everyone.
Hi, everybody.
So, Kiana, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Your background growing up, just a little bit about who you were, a little girl, just, yeah.
Oh, that little girl. I'll tell you right now, as a 35-year-old woman, I'm still trying to help and heal that little girl. That little girl, she's from New York. That little girl, she was actually in foster care. My mother, she grew up in Harlem. So she was there during the crack epidemic. She ended up being a crackhead. She couldn't take care of me. She ended up giving me to her sister, which in turn is leading to a lot of years of undoing because I had wished my aunt would have just honored the fact of her nurturing me and caring for me as my aunt. But she held herself in the regards of my mother. So you can just imagine the trauma that I'm trying to undo from that.
Oh, wow. So instead of taking you as her niece and uh, caring for you that way, she felt as though it was a burden now that she had to become your mom. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think she thought it as a burden, but
Okay.
I don't think maybe she handled it selfishly.
Okay.
It wasn't like, my sister is your mom and I'm taking care of you. It was my mom was erased. She chose the streets over you. So I want you, you're mine. She never brought me
Oh.
to my mother or anything. She just tried to erase me.
Oh, okay, I understand now. I understand. So she just took the place of your mom as if you were her own, and your mom was never in the picture. Wow. So, I mean, what was that like, growing up with that being the case?
For a long time, I was just really oblivious. And then until I was actually introduced to my mother, I remember it clear as day. She had gotten out of jail, and this was when house parties was a thing. They threw a welcome home party for her. And I was a little girl, so I was doing little girl things. And she was like, "You need to stop." And I'm like, "For what? You're not my mama." She was like, "Oh, yes, I am." Mind blown, right? So the next morning, my aunt wakes me up and she's like, "That lady you met, she's actually your mother, and I'm actually your aunt, but she didn't want you. I want you. I love you."
Wow. So how did that make you feel at that point? I mean, that's like big, I mean, emotionally, that must have been made an impact on you. So like, what was that like?
Honestly, that's when life got to rolling because shortly afterwards, we ended up in foster care and then life just kept going. So I guess in a way, I never really had time to sit down and think about emotions. I was in survival mode up until maybe 2 years ago.
Really? Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you're not in survival mode anymore. That's definitely great, and that's a blessing. So if I may ask, what happened if, your aunt who she took you as her own, she became your mom to the point of now your mom is introduced, now going to foster care.
So we were in foster care. And at that time, my mom had cleaned up her life behind the scenes. She ended up getting married. And then she started to fight for us. And I did live with her for a little bit, but because of the disconnect and whatever I went through in my childhood, we just really couldn't connect. So people ask me where I'm from, and I've already told you this. I'm a nomad. Like, I went from foster home to foster home, state to state. Even as a young adult, I couch surfed a lot up until like 2 years ago. No, I want to say 4 years ago when I got married. Then
Okay.
life started to settle down.
Okay. So, who would you say Quiana was in high school?
Honestly, I was just very oblivious. That's why I attribute everything to God. So I don't know my biological father. And this is where God comes in behind the scenes. He has always protected me.
Mhm.
He has reminded me of certain situations and how bad it could have gone. But because of him, he saved me from it. And that's why I'm able to be here today, right now.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. So, w- I'm thinking like, so, I know you mentioned,
You can ask me anything. You can ask me. I'm gonna be honest, but you can ask me.
okay, you mentioned that you're a little oblivious. I know that, probably to your family situation and just maybe things like that. But what about your social life in high school? Like, what was that like? Or
Social.
did you not have one until later on? Or
So I believe I did have a social life. High school was my safe haven because at home, it wasn't the greatest. We were still trying to get to know each other as mother and daughter, even years later. So when I got to high school, it was my saving grace.
So what happened next? What happened after school, high school?
I kept being a nomad. I kept moving just from place to place. I did end up going back to stay with my mom, but that didn't work. She kicked me out at 18. I ended up living with her other sister. That didn't work. And then that's how I ended up back in the city as a young adult. Then after that, I ended up moving to Arizona. And this is when I'm trying to grow up and I'm more in the world because I'm under no parental guidance now. I'm just with my
Mhm.
sister. And in Arizona, that's when I met my husband.
So, okay, so you mentioned not being in under any parental guidance when you moved to Arizona, but prior to that, was your aunt strict or even your mom strict when you were before you turned 18?
How long you got? No, but seriously, so my mom, she had a pretty rough life. So I'm not sure if she was trying to heal herself, then also trying to take care of these girls who had just re-entered into her life.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't, she wasn't strict, but I think she was just trying to figure it out. She
Okay.
had a man in her life she was a newlywed herself. It was just a lot going on.
Right.
I think she was strict, but for the most part, she was just trying to figure it out.
Okay. She was just doing the best she could at the time, processing all of it, being new to everything all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. So, well, I know your mom wasn't a part of your early life, so you probably weren't exposed to any of, the things that her addictions or anything like that. Did those resurface in your adult life in any way?
What she had been through, did it affect me later?
Yeah. Or did you find yourself, yeah, pretty much. Did it affect you later?
Oh yeah. So she had an addictive spirit. She was addicted to crack. So in turn, I I ended up being addicted to cigarettes.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I fully started understanding Jesus and turning things over to him and allowing him to work it out was I able to be broken from that addiction.
Okay. Okay. So prior to knowing, like, what was your life, what did your life look like now that you were out on your own, no parental guidance, you can make your own choices, no one saying where to go left, don't go here, don't go there. What was that like? What was Quiana doing now?
It was just, so when people ask me things like this, I just attribute it to being in a state of oblivion. I didn't really know. There was really no real guidance. It was just like I was just floating down this river with no paddle. Let's just see where it takes me. Like, intentionality didn't really happen until my husband came in my life, and he was like, you need to wake up and realize what's going on.
Wow. So you were just going here and there wherever the wind blew, just
That's
doing
why,
whatever.
exactly. That's why I really feel like it was God protective power. He was
Mm,
my spiritual father behind the scenes, because he knew that the people he entrusted to take care of me, I'm just going to say they dropped the ball, but he never
mhm.
did.
Right.
He was there behind the scenes.
Wow. I like the way you put that. You know, it it's oblivion, but at the same time that it was like God's hand. He was protecting you from what you really didn't need to know, right? You didn't really need
Facts.
to get
Yep.
pretty much. So I like it. I like the way you put it like that. So so tell me then, it seems like things started shaking up when you met your husband.
So when I met my husband, he himself, he had a goal in which he wanted to obtain. And when he met me, I didn't have any goals. I was just trying to make it from day to day. And even in our story, God is in that, because you have to be equally yoked.
Right.
Right now, I feel like we are equally yoked. We're on the same page. And we can attribute it to God. It's just like, honestly, there is nothing that I'm just a vessel, just a vessel. God did everything.
Okay. So what were the type of things that you enjoyed doing?
When I was younger,
Hmm.
I did have a few loves. I had a love for hair.
Hmm.
I went to cosmetology school. I had a love for, how you say, painting and drawing. I did do that for a little bit. I really like reading. I guess you can say that's a hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like doing those when I
Okay.
wasn't out trying to survive and I actually had time to do something.
So what did surviving look like? What did trying to survive? What did trying to survive look like?
So I guess it was just being in different atmospheres. So growing up in a family atmosphere with like a mother, father, brother, sister, I didn't have that. Just living in other people's houses, they're fighting their demons, and then I'm trying to survive. It was just trying to make it.
And what was it like being in foster care?
Oh. Mm. To be honest, I didn't really have anything too detrimental happen to me. There were some events. I'll just go ahead and be honest. I was exposed to sex early. I was exposed to weed early. I was exposed to abuse early. But with God and his protective power, it didn't get like really, really bad. It still happened, but he didn't let it happen like really bad.
Okay. See, you were exposed, maybe dipped your toe in the water, but it didn't become something that engulfed you.
So when it came to the weed, I do remember the first time I seen weed, and he offered it to me, but like it was just like no. I knew I shouldn't have done it, and I feel like
Mhm.
that was God's protective power.
Right. Okay. Okay. So at what point did you, come to know the Lord, or, have an encounter?
So a little bit of contrast. Before I personally knew God, I just knew of him. I knew him as Sky Daddy in the sky. When I need something, I pray. When I need protection, oh Lord Jesus, protect me, It wasn't until after I came out of the new age, that's a whole nother testimony in itself. That's
Oh,
when
we
I
need to hear that testimony.
huh?
I said, we need to hear that testimony.
You want to hear it now?
Yes, let's hear it.
So how did I get into new age? So I used to have this saying. I would say that I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, but I never knew what it meant. So I looked it up. I looked up spirituality, and I ran into this young lady who was very big in the spiritual community once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I had hit, I don't want to say a low point, but I was very vulnerable. And she's caught me at a vulnerable time. I didn't know about like spiritual and religion, and I knew God was invisible, but to me he was just Sky Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into tarot cards, crystals. I didn't really do the whole manifestation thing. I kind of dipped my pinky toe in. Jesus was like holding me by my edges, like, where you going, girl? Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So that's how I came to know Jesus, because she had like, I don't want to say epiphany, but God was like, what are you doing? Wake up. And then she told her community, she was like, I've led you guys astray. Like, we are going the wrong way. We need to go back to Jesus. And it was at that point when I started like, who is this Jesus? Because I didn't know Jesus. I only knew God. And I was like, more to this? Like, you can go deeper into this? And then I just started pressing in.
Wow. Wow. I think that's the first time I've ever heard someone say they knew God, but they didn't know who Jesus was. Because usually if someone, they don't know God, they don't know, Jesus, they just don't know altogether. But to know God, to know that we can pray to him, but then at the same time not know Jesus, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Wow. So how long were you in that community before the leader, you know, um, was able to say, guys, we're going in the wrong direction?
It was a year. It was a year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how was it? Did you find that things were better, worse, or the same during that year for you?
On a personal level or
Yes, on a
spiritual
personal, both.
level? So that year, I ended up getting a diagnosis, and I had stopped. My husband was like, okay, maybe you should take a break, just stay at home until, we figure this thing out.
Mm-hmm.
So that had happened. But I think it was a year after that, that's when things started getting better. Even my husband noticed when the Bible says that you become a new creature in Christ and you turn your way over to him, you do. He helped me to stop procrastinating. He helped me be more aware of my finances, my stewardship. He helped me want to show compassion to others. He really taught me what it meant to walk in grace. A lot of Christians, they go through things and then they get condemned and they're just like, I messed up, I'm too far gone. But Jesus was like, no, you're not. You just got to keep going. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be worth it. And that's what I've seen with him. It's really worth it.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. So after, so did the community leader, did she lead you guys to Christ, or did you happen to give your life to Christ totally separate from that?
So technically, I was baptized in middle school, and then I turned my life over to Jesus once I came out of New Age, and I started doing my own studies.
Okay, so just in your own studies, that's when you gave your life to Christ. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. So what was that like for you? What was that moment? You know, it's like it's a defining moment of your life, like you remember it. It's like what was that moment like? Where were you? What were you doing? What were you thinking?
So a lot of people, they usually stay away from the Old Testament. And they're encouraged to start in the New Testament because God in the Old Testament, he wasn't playing around. No, but for me, Jesus didn't do that for me. He took me from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And when I was spooked when he took me through the ringer. So when people talk about the Old Testament, I'm not afraid to sit down and do a Bible study on the Old Testament. I'm not afraid to talk about the wrath of God because he took me through the whole process.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So in that moment, it basically, or what I'm understanding, is like the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord gripped your heart. You're like, I'm not playing around. I'm not playing. Here I am. You can have me.
Yep.
So, what took place after that? After you got, after you gave your life to Jesus, what did life look like now? What are some of the things that you started doing differently before you said yes to now that you said yes?
Now that I said yes, this is where the beauty happens. My marriage, it really started to look like how God ordained it to be. My friendships, like the characteristic of Jesus really started to play out. I was able to show people compassion and forgiveness. All of the things that he wants us to walk out, I was able to really walk it out.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. So both, when you met your husband, did you guys get married before you were saved or after you were saved?
Before I was saved.
Okay, so now that so when you guys were both unsaved and you were married, what did life look like now that you were saved and he was not, or did he get saved shortly after, or what was that like?
No, he was saved.
Oh, he was saved before you. So how was it? What was it like then with him being saved and you weren't saved?
So I still prayed and I still relied on God, but it was very surface. Okay. Now it's more intimate. And with my husband, he has mastered respecting other people where they are. He didn't push me like this is what you need to be doing. He allowed me to flourish in my own time because he believed that I would get to this point. I would get to where I would need to be.
Nice. I like that. That's beautiful, and I'm pretty sure he was praying for you too. You know, not trying to do it from his own flesh, but giving it to God so that He could work on you and pull you to Him. So I think that's beautiful. So you mentioned you know, friendships looking different. So in what ways do you mean?
How we spent time together, what we did. Like back in the day, I used to party, I used to drink, and things like that. But when I came to Christ, I was like, y'all want to have a Bible study? Yeah, y'all want to pray. Like it just became different how I interacted with them. And a lot of them, they really tried to allow me to grow because they knew, I guess I was a quote unquote baby Christian coming into my own.
Mhm.
But I was like this bold baby Christian. I was excited and I was just like,
Yeah.
what we have to do. And then Jesus showed me, that's when I learned about the Pharisees. And I was like, I think I'm in the Pharisees because I told you, God took me through the Old Testament to the New
Right.
Testament. I knew about the laws and we shouldn't be following these laws and we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that. And they're like, y'all, you gotta calm down. I can't wait till you get to Jesus. And I finally got to Jesus and I calmed down.
Wow, that's funny. Okay, I see. So now you're just meeting them where they are, pretty much.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
Right. That's beautiful. Do you have any children?
No, ma'am, not yet.
No, not yet. Okay. What do you plan to do different from your aunt and your mom when you do have children?
This may sound a little bit harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Two things. I plan on keeping my husband in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I also plan on following the instructions that God left in the Bible. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how does He want me to raise children? I'm
Right.
gonna do what it says. Do what the Bible says.
I mean, why not? Right. Okay. Okay. I know you have a ministry, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us, you know, the name of your ministry and what it's about? What's your mission, your goal, all of that?
So I don't know if you can see my background, but it's called Kingdom Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I have a ministry partner. Her name is Monique. And we both started the ministry. It was kind of based off how we met.
Okay.
So me and Monique, we were actually in the New Age thing together. But she grew up in the church, so she knew Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But she also knew to just like meet people where they were, and we became really close. So one day I asked her, and it was actually another person in our small group as well. I was like, so what are we gonna call each other? Are we gonna be like brother, sister? Because I'm like, I don't want to do the whole best friend thing. She was like, we the big cousins. And it stuck because of I didn't have that experience because I was in
Right.
foster care. So I'm like, what's a big cousin? And we just that's who we were to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's where the ministry came from. But I also had this desire to like edify God's kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission is to edify God's kingdom one citizen at a time. So
Right.
that's what we do we just have a safe space and we teach you about the nature of God. And me personally in my life, I feel like I'm an example walking out grace. I keep going. I've been knocked
Mm-hmm.
down, I've been hurt, I've lost things, but I'm not letting go of Jesus. And I just want other people to see that. So
Right.
that's what cousin is.
Right. Nice. I like that. I like that you said to teach people about the nature of God because that's so important. Because if you understand the nature of God, you pretty much understand who God is. Like, you're on the right path to knowing fully who God is.
Amen.
And once you know who God is, I mean, that's it. um, so how can one become a kingdom cousin?
So we actually have a group on Facebook. You can look up Kingdom Cousins. We have the app Band. It's private right now, but you can just send a request. I believe you just look up Kingdom Cousins.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And what kind of activities do you guys do in Kingdom Cousins, or is that exclusive?
No, no, no. It's not exclusive. So the ministry is still new. So
Mm-hmm.
we're calling it beta stages. So right now we just have the two platforms. We do something consistently. On Mondays, we post edifying tips. And on Thursdays, I will myself will upload a video, or either Monique or someone in the group. We testify to the nature of God, or we just give a testimony. So we do those Mondays and Thursdays every week. But right now, we just chop it up. We don't have
Okay,
meetings or anything like that. It's in beta stage. And plus, I'm new to being like a leader over something.
right. I understand. You guys are just taking baby steps right now and allowing the Lord to lead.
Yes.
What would you what would you say to Quiana, young Quiana before she was on her own?
Ooh. I would tell young Kiana that just keep going. Your spiritual eyes will be open and you will see what you truly need to see. I don't want to call this the matrix, but it's just false. Is this physical world is tarnished. It has nothing for us. So once God really shows you who you are and whose you are, it'll get better.
Mm, I like that. That your eyes will open, and once God shows you who you are and whose you are, it's gonna get better. Very encouraging. What would you say to someone who went through being a nomad like you, going from foster care place to place? How would you encourage them?
I would tell them to keep going. Don't go. Like I would tell them, remember Lot's wife. Don't look back. Just keep going. It's gonna be all right. There's nothing back there for us. It's just nothing.
Right, that's true. And how would you encourage someone um, who might have delved into New Age and does feel that condemnation that you mentioned earlier? Um, you know, thinking that, I made a mistake. How could I? Even if they grew up knowing who Jesus is, and now they dove into New Age and they feel like they're too far gone to come back out.
I would encourage them to really rely on what he says. Like, if the Bible says it can do X, Y, and Z, test
Mhm.
it. God, you said this, show me. Allow him to show himself.
Okay. Okay. Allow him to show himself that, that he can forgive and restore and heal.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That makes sense. And to the woman who is thinking about, walking in purpose or doing the thing that God has laid on her heart, like starting a ministry or writing a book or making music, whatever it is, but they feel like they don't have enough history with the Lord, or they don't know enough, um, or it's like, little old me, who am I? How can you encourage them to step out and be bold? Because, who knows what can happen if they just be obedient, if they're just obedient. How would you encourage them to step out?
Well, practically, just the fact that I'm able to tell them, like, you have a purpose. God woke you up that morning, you're breathing, and you have all your abilities. Just walk it out spiritually. I would tell them, read Hebrews 11. There are so many people in that chapter who felt like they shouldn't have been used, like Rahab, for instance. God
Mhm.
used her. We all, I think, we all know who she is, but just in case, she was a prostitute, but
Mhm.
she led the people out the city to safety. Like, you
Right.
have a place in his kingdom. Just trust him. Have faith. Just have faith.
Amen. Have faith. Any last remarks from you, Quiana?
Yes, I'm gonna be humble. Like, I never imagined myself being in this position, but when God says that He has good thoughts and good plans for you, He means it. It's not going to be perfect or pretty all the time, but you will get to where you need to be. And I want to say thank you so much for allowing me in front of your community. Thank you for trusting me. And I really hope that I did you some justice. I thank you so much.
No, I want to say thank you, for being willing to be open to share and to be vulnerable with us. You didn't have to, but you said you would, and I really appreciate that. And I know someone will be encouraged, someone will be inspired to step out on faith, and to not count themselves out, but to step out on faith and do what God has called them to do, just as you are now with Kingdom Cousins. All right, it was great having you, and you enjoy the rest of your night. Take care.